Hey, over the next couple of weeks, I did put your unit exam date up here. Okay, your unit exam date for biology is going to be November the 6th. We'll probably be done before that, but that's when I'm going to make it because that gives you more than 2 weeks notice, okay, of when it will be. Now, over the next couple of weeks, we will have a fair amount of work to do, but a lot of it is going to be in class, not taken home for homework. Okay, so we're going to, on Thursday, be working on a cell size and transport activity that I actually had planned for yesterday, but I wasn't here, so I didn't have to do it. So we're going to do that on Thursday. Okay, that is an in-class activity. That means you need to work efficiently and have it done for the end of class. Okay, so I'm limiting homework, but I'm also meaning that you're going to have to work in class. If you don't, you're going to hand in something that's not done. Okay. Then on Friday, we're going to start our plant transport lab. So that's why we're going to go over this stuff today. Okay. We're going to start our plant transport lab where we're going to be taking cuttings of a plant, okay, and observing the path of water as it flows through the plant over the course of the weekend. Okay, because by the time we come back on Monday, everything should be kind of done. And then next week, we'll have a couple more in-class activities. On Monday, we'll be doing kind of a reading activity to do with osmosis. Okay, and then we'll be doing a lab design activity later in the week where you'll design a lab to test the effect of a variable on plant growth. Okay, again, those are both in-class activities. They are not going to be taken home for homework. They are to be done in class. Okay, and then on Thursday and Friday, you'll be doing your research project for this unit. Okay, so that'll be researching a plant species of your choice, like you did with the toxin in the last unit. This one will be on a plant species of your choice. Okay, so that stuff's all coming up. So there's a fair amount of stuff that's going to be done in class. Not a lot of homework, okay, but a lot of stuff that's going to have to be worked on and completed in class. Yes, there will be some homework. Obviously, the plant transport lab report will be homework. Okay, you'll get 2 days to work on the plant project, but that will be homework. So the other stuff will all be done in class. Okay, so it's going to be kind of fast and furious for a little while, but I like to have all that stuff done so that by the time the end of November comes, I've got lots of stuff to show your parents for parent-teacher interviews and things like that. Okay, so just know that's kind of what's coming up for you over the next little while. Then we'll be moving into physics, okay, and we'll have all of November, and basically we'll probably have a unit exam right before Christmas on physics. Okay, if all goes well. Okay, because the last unit only takes 7 or 8 days to teach, so we do that right after we come back and we're done. Okay, global systems and energy. Yeah, it's a hodgepodge. Okay, so for lesson 8 here, transport and multicellular organisms. So the lesson 11 talked about one of the most important things in lesson 11 was the layers of the leaf. Okay, if you remember that from yesterday, the layers of the leaf. Okay, that is your example of specialization in a multicellular organism. Okay, you could clearly see that within the leaf there were similarities between all of the cells, but also differences. Those differences are the result of cells being specialized to do certain jobs. Okay, there will definitely be a question on your unit exam about specialization using the layers of the leaf as the example. Okay, so make sure that you go over that. I'll be kind of referring to that a little bit as we talk about plant transport as well. Okay? All right, so we got to look at how transport within cells is similar and involved in transport in a multicellular organism. There's similar processes being used, but over a larger scale. Okay? Understand how nutrients, that's water, sugar, and minerals, are going to be transported in vascular plants. What does the term vascular mean? Veins or tubes. Okay? Vascularization means tubes. Okay? Having tubes. It's one of the things they actually look for. If you've ever had your eye exam, okay, they shine that light in until you just look straight ahead, and then they kind of move that kind of vertical light back and forth and look in the back of your eye. What they're looking for is any change in the amount of blood vessels that form in the back of the eye. Okay? If you start to get increased vascularization in your eye, it can be a sign that your eye is being starved for oxygen and your body is trying to relieve that. Usually means that your contact lenses aren't fitting correctly or that you have some sort of problem with your cornea. Okay? So the vascularization means tubes, okay? Transport of things with tubes. right? Not all plants are vascular plants. Okay, a moss is not a vascular plant. Okay, a liverwort or a hornwort, okay, things like that, those are not vascular plants. Okay, they do not have tubes, which is why they tend to grow small along the ground in well-shaded, covered, wet areas. Okay, they cannot transport stuff over long distances because they would have to do that by diffusion, and that doesn't work over long distances. I did, pretty sure. Yep. Okay. We're going to look at the structure of vascular plants. That we'll kind of go through quickly because it's pretty obvious. Okay, and you did it yesterday. Okay, learn what forces are involved in the transport of water and nutrients. Okay, so the big problem for plants is what they need is spatially separated. It's not in the same place. Okay, water and nutrients are in the dirt. There's no light in the dirt. Light's necessary. Carbon dioxide, not in the dirt. It's in the air surrounding it. So all of those resources are not in the same place. So they have to be transported from place to place. Okay, that's why they have a system of tubes in order to help them do that. Okay, so body of a vascular plant is differentiated essentially into three groups. Okay, you've got the root system that is responsible for the acquisition of water and minerals. Okay, you have a shoot system. Okay, that is going to be the photosynthetic part, and then not on here for some reason is the stem. Well, it says stem here. Stem does some photosynthesis, but mostly the stem is responsible for conduction and support of the plant. Okay, so that's its main job. So we got roots, stem, and then leaves. Those are essentially the three parts of a plant. Now, some plants don't necessarily have all three, like grasses, for example. Okay, grasses, their leaves and their stem are combined, okay, into one blade. Okay. But most plants don't work that way. Okay. So what we've got here, guys, are just some examples of different survival tactics, things like that, and I went over those yesterday. Okay, for plants, how some of them store energy, okay, how some of them use that energy, okay, how they can, have stolons and things like that that can help them to grow in other places, okay, in order to acquire their nutrients and stuff. So we're kind of going to skip that because you guys got that covered yesterday. All right, so lignin. Super important, okay? Got to know that, okay? Lignin is this special protein that can be produced and then embedded in the cell walls, okay, of a plant, right? And I think I used the example in the recording that it's like the mortar you would put between bricks, okay? So if you were laying bricks, it's the mortar that holds the bricks together. If you've ever seen what laying bricks looks like, okay? When you put a brick down, okay, and you put a brick next to it, okay, you fill in the gaps with, it's like cement. Okay, that's what mortar is. And bricks usually, if you look at them from the top, okay, will have holes in them like this. Okay, cinder blocks have big holes in them, right? And they actually pour cement down into the holes when they put cinder blocks together. Okay, so what that's doing is it's binding the bricks together. Right, so for a tree, okay, the lignin acts like mortar so that when I lay another brick on top of these ones, they will be stuck together by this mortar. It makes it stronger than if I just lay bricks on top of each other with nothing in between, because then I can just kick it over. Right? But as soon as I attach them, or glue them together essentially, they become much stronger. That's how plants and trees can get like the wood stems or the wood trunks that we see really big trees will have, right? If you look in here, okay, I've got some plants that have kind of wood-like stems, like okay, these little ficus here, okay? They have the hardened stems that are kind of like wood, okay? Whereas these ones, their stem is firm but not wood-like, which is why it doesn't grow up. It goes kind of out. Right, over on the other side there, okay, I've got those dragon palms, okay, that are kind of right behind column, okay, obviously they would have some lignin, okay, lignin is strong but also flexible. If you've ever seen a palm tree in a hurricane, they can practically bend right over and not break, okay, whereas a tree around here in a big windstorm will just snap off, okay, whereas this plant here, which is also a type of palm, and the whole reason they keep it around is for this unit, okay, is not, no, it doesn't have a lot of lignin in it. Okay, and as a result, it's had to be held up by various different structures that I've put in there, broom handles, broken javelin, okay, PVC pipe, stuff like that. Because once it starts to get tall, it doesn't have that solid lignin kind of embedded structure, and it just falls over. Okay, so what I end up doing is just cutting it off and sticking it back in the ground. Okay? And they'll actually grow that way. And they'll grow from the cutoff part, they'll grow from the part to stick back to the ground. Okay, which is why there's now 2 of them instead of 1. Okay, we use them again because this one here, it's all nice and dwarfed. Looks crazy. I've done that I prevent my plants. Okay. So, lignin, important stuff. Okay, lignin allows plants to become very strong, and that allows them to get taller, and that's important because plants compete for resources in the same way that animals do. Okay, if you're in a herd of bison, okay, and there's only so much grass to go around, is there a competition for the grass? Yeah, you go to a party and there's only one pizza, it can get kind of ugly. Okay, that's just a natural way of living things. They compete for available resources. If the resources are limited, some compete better than others. That's how natural selection works. Okay, those that compete better live, and they reproduce, and their genes get passed on. That's good because they were obviously better suited to the environment, competed better, and beat out their competition. Okay, and that's basically how it works. Okay, well, it's the same for plants. If I'm a plant and my genetic material, whatever, codes for me to be the dwarf version of that plant, and you get those sometimes. Okay, that's actually a mutation within plants. There's like normal and then dwarf. And I'm not saying that is like politically incorrect. It's actually a term used to describe a genetic mutation for plants. Okay, so if there's a shortened version of a plant and a taller version, it's probably shorter than the dwarf version. Okay, if that's me and I'm in a forest like this, I'm not going to do very well. I'm not going to grow tall enough to compete for light. I'll be shaded out by my competitors. Okay? The taller I can get, the more competitive I will be for light, and I'm more likely to survive and reproduce and pass on my genes and plants get tall. Everyone okay with that idea? Okay, so lignin helps with that. Okay? Lignin can also be used as a shell. Right? It can be used to protect certain structures within the plant. So pine cones, okay, they generally have a lot of lignin around them, okay, that encase them and protect the seed. Absolutely, the pits of a fruit, okay, like basically all seed materials, as long as they're a hard seed, okay, are going to have lignin surrounding them. A chestnut, the pit of a peach or a nectarine, okay, something like that. Yeah, definitely a hard material. Now, with seeds, the other part of seeds is that sometimes a seed is designed to break down quickly if it just falls off the tree. Other seeds are designed to not germinate until certain conditions have been met. And I think I talked about this yesterday in the recording, but certain types of pine trees will not only have lignin around their cones, but the cones will be encased in a resin, like a sticky, hardened sap. Okay? The cones won't open up and release the seeds until the resin is burned. Okay? So these plants will release these cones every year, but the seeds don't come out. The seeds don't germinate. Okay? They don't germinate until there's a what? Forest fire. Why is that smart?
And they can be like one of the first ones to replace the trees that got burned because their seeds are these.
Exactly, and the conditions are better. If I'm a little tiny baby tree in an old growth forest, my chances of survival are poor. Okay, because I'm competing with trees that are established, have defined, very well spread out and deep root systems, and are very tall and are getting all of the light. If I'm a small tree in that forest, I'm not going to do very well. However, if there's been a forest fire, those trees are now dead. Okay, their roots might still be in the ground, but they're not active. They're not stealing the water. So now, if I'm a small tree, I actually have perfect conditions. I'm shaded a little bit, but not as much because the foliage has been burned away. Okay, but I'm not exposed to direct sunlight when I'm small. Okay, and that's actually pretty important. That's why there's such a high failure rate in logged areas for the replanted trees. Okay, when they replant the trees, they're exposed to way more sunlight than the tree would normally be at that stage in its life. So they actually, a lot of them die. But in the natural environment, okay, those trees are a bit shaded, at least for a few years, until those burned trees eventually start to what? No, they fall down. Right? All the ones that are burned and dead, it takes a few years. They don't fall down right away. Right? It takes a few years for them to start to rot, and then they fall. And those smaller ones are growing up and getting taller and needing more light. It's called succession. It's a natural kind of progression of an ecosystem to recover from a fire. Okay? But that's just kind of one of their survival tactics. Other plants, their seeds actually have to be eaten in order for them to germinate. Okay? They have to pass through the digestive tract of one of the animals that eats them in order to remove a protective layer from the seed. And then the seed is deposited on the ground in a nutrient-rich medium from which it can grow. Okay? In fact, there's a species of plant now I think it's in South America, that is going extinct because its seeds had to pass through the digestive tract of the dodo. The dodo's been extinct for over 100 years now. Okay? And because this plant had evolved with the dodo and was dependent on the digestive conditions within the dodo, none of its seeds are germinating because the prey animal isn't going. Well, they're out there constantly artificially planting.
From like an environmental perspective, did you see that selective cutting of trees for some foresters?
Yes. Yeah. Selective logging is the least invasive type of logging.
It's the fishing, but it's the best.
Oh yes, the least efficient by a huge. That's why nobody does it. Right? But it's definitely the best way. Yeah. Clear cuts are weeds. Okay. Is that making sense? The importance of lignin.
Yep.
Okay. Make sure you have a note of that somewhere. Okay, other adaptations of vascular plants. Okay, so I showed you that video there at the beginning of the unit of the plant as it recovered. This is the same plant, but in a different time that I forgot to water it.
You're just torturing your plants.
Well, I know. This is actually what they look like when I come back from the summer, every summer. Because I always forget to come back and then water them. Okay, so August when I come back, I'm like, oh crap, my plants, and then I water them again. Okay, but they all look really, really wilted. Okay, and they look wilted because their water vacuoles are draining. Okay, and it's not because the plant uses that as a water reserve. It's not. Okay, but as the plant becomes dehydrated, the concentration of salts in the cytoplasm goes up, and that naturally draws water out of the water vacuole by osmosis. Okay, and that causes the water vacuole to drain. The water vacuole doesn't exert that turgor pressure against the inside of the cell wall. Okay, and eventually what can happen is the cell membrane can actually start to pull away from the cell wall, as you see in this diagram here, causing the cell to almost collapse and giving the plant these wilted appearances. As long as it's not crunchy, okay, watering it will bring it back. Those water vacuoles will fill right back up again, and the plant will slowly recover, as you saw in that video I showed you before.
Maybe a bit of a dumb question.
Probably not.
Can plants use photosynthesis?
Any light source will work. Different wavelengths are better depending on the type of plant. Okay, and there's lots of studies based on what wavelengths do they need, what wavelengths work best. Fluorescent light that's like bluish light like that is really good. Generally. Okay, so is any artificial yellowish light because that's similar to like the sun. Yeah.
Plants like die like a certain age, and they just like live forever if it's the right condition.
Well, no plant's going to live forever. But when we start talking about in lessons to come here, different plant hormones, there's reasons why plants can live much longer than animals do.
For succulents, is this a completely different story?
Yeah, generally yes. Succulents are usually what we call a C4 or CAM type of plant, which means their leaf structure is totally different. Yeah, the layers look totally different. I think actually I showed you that. There was a diagram of that in yesterday's lesson, the CAM4, C4 CAM plant, different leaf structure like cactus. Yeah. Yeah, they don't generally look.
It just
Well, it's just because they're built different. Okay, so we've got the lignified cell walls, but they depend on, they're still going to depend, or at least the leafy tissue is going to depend on the turgor pressure in the cell walls in order to keep them upright. Okay? And part of a plant doing this, yes, the plant naturally wilts like this, but that's also going to help it to save water because when they're in their healthy state, their leaves kind of point, they stand out more and their flattened edges are better exposed to the sun. When they're wilted, they tend to face downwards, so they get less exposure to the sun, and their water loss rate can decrease a little bit because they're no longer directly facing the source of their. Yeah, it's all just evolution. It's not so much smart. The plant doesn't consciously do this. Okay, it's just over millions of years that species have evolved to do that. Okay, roots. Roots are important, okay? They act as an anchor and they supply the plant with water and nutrients. That's what's in the dirt, okay? There's two different types of root systems. You probably learned this in like grade 7 or 8, okay? The two different types are tap roots, okay? So this would be a tap root, a carrot, a turnip, okay? Something like that. Dandelions have tap roots. Have you ever had to pull those out of your lawn? Okay, yeah, really, really deep. Same with like a Canada thistle. Okay, they have a tap root as well. Okay, so they go down really, really deep. There are some advantages to that. Obviously, if the top layer of the soil begins to dry out, you still have access to wet soil further down. Okay, as an anchor, they're very strong, but not good in windy conditions if you're a big plant. You almost never see a tall tree with a tap root. Okay? The reason being is in a windstorm, the top of the tree starts to sway back and forth. If they have a big taproot, it'll cause a pivot point at ground level, and the taproot will work itself like this back and forth, and eventually the tree will come out. Okay? Or it'll snap off. Okay? Having a spread out fibrous root system gives you a greater surface area to hold on to and more flexibility, okay, in terms of being able to withstand wind and things like that. Also in flooding conditions, okay, as soil begins to be washed away, a plant with a taproot is going to be more likely to remain kind of attached, whereas something with a shallower root layer is going to be washed away. All right, tap roots typically are associated with plants that are storing food as well. Okay, storing energy is much easier in a taproot because there tends to be more starchy material there. That's what a carrot or a turnip or a beet, okay, is energy storage below ground. Okay, fibrous root systems, okay, again, greater surface area, more spread out. And they tend to have structures on them called root nodules that can contain bacteria that are responsible for converting atmospheric nitrogen into nitrates, which is a type of fertilizer, okay? And that enables those kinds of plants to grow a little bit better. Okay? This is kind of part of the science of farming. Okay? Farmers who try and use less fertilizer will often use a technique known as crop rotation. Okay? And in crop rotation, you grow a nutrient-demanding crop one year, and then the next year you grow something that can try and replenish the nutrients to the soil. So if you grow canola, okay, one year, the next year you're probably going to grow like field peas or beans or something like that that has roots like this, where there will be some natural replenishment of the soil by the plant itself. Then you don't have to have such high input of fertilizer. When you're growing canola, you got to put fertilizer on. So this stuff's incredibly demanding. Okay? But yeah, that's what we use there. Okay, everybody all right with that idea? Okay, so two types of root systems, tap roots and fibrous roots. Okay, they have their advantages and their disadvantages. There's not really one that's better than the other. It's just based on conditions. Okay. Which one do you suppose a cactus has? It's fibrous. Yeah, the saguaro cactus has a fibrous root system, and it can extend 50 meters from the plant out. Straight out. Think about it though. In the desert, it doesn't matter how deep your root is. It's dry all the way down. Okay, it never rains, or very rarely. So water never gets a chance to absorb very deep. So you want to have your roots right at the surface, so when it does rain, you can absorb it as quickly as possible. Okay, stems. Stems are responsible for supporting the plant, okay, and transport of nutrients from the roots to the leaves, and vice versa. Okay? Vascular plants actually have two types of tubes. One type of tube is responsible for transporting water and nutrients up. The other one for transporting sugars produced in the leaves downwards. Okay? Really important that we know that there are two sets of tubes. You can't have stuff going two different directions in the same tube. Okay? It would be like having a northbound and a southbound train on the same track. Okay, you just can't do that. All right, so the stem obviously is supported by turgor pressure or by lignin or both, okay, as the case may be. It's also where new growth tends to happen. Okay, you'll have like buds, different types of buds that can grow. And in this diagram or this picture here, you can see that the plant is cut off here in the second picture. Okay, and what's happened is, in order to replace that, the plant has grown from the buds that were further down. Okay, and this is what happens when you prune a plant. Okay, if anyone's ever seen like a hedge maze, okay, or like has a hedge around their house, in order to make a hedge get thicker, you keep trimming it back. And what that does, it makes the plant grow from further back and make it look thicker. Okay, when a plant tends to grow tall, it tends to be kind of skinny. Okay, if you trim it back, it grows from further back to replace that stuff, and it gets thicker. Same with your lawn. The more you mow it, the thicker it'll get. Okay, because it'll always grow from further back down. No, the same thing does not apply to hair. Otherwise, I would be cutting my hair all the time. Yeah, it's coming for you at some point. Next. All right. So with the leaves, okay, layers of the leaf. I showed you layers of the leaf yesterday. I'm showing you layers of the leaf again. How important are layers of the leaf? Very, very important. Okay, so layers of the leaf. Okay, the leaf is designed to do a number of different jobs. We have the upper epidermis and the lower epidermis, basically the same thing. They both secrete the waxy cuticle that covers the leaf. Okay, the waxy cuticle seals the leaf completely. Okay, it does not allow evaporation to occur from all parts of the leaf's surface. That helps to conserve water. That's an important job. As you can see, though, those cuticle cells contain basically no chloroplasts. Their job is not photosynthesis. Their job is evaporation control. Okay? Below that is the layer responsible for photosynthesis. Okay? It's the palisade layer. Lots and lots of cells jammed together, okay, as close as possible. You could see this actually in the leaf when we looked at it in the cell anatomy lab. Okay? There was a layer where the cells were very vertical looking, and then below that they were kind of random looking, didn't really have a specific shape or anything like that. Okay? So the palisade layer is the photosynthetic layer of the leaf. Okay? Lots and lots of chloroplasts, dense cells, okay, or like a high cell density, okay, in that area. Below that is what we call the spongy layer. Okay? The spongy layer contains plant cells. They do carry out photosynthesis, but that's not their main job. Okay? They want to create kind of a spongy or porous layer where water can be kind of not stored but kept, and gases can be exchanged for photosynthesis. That would be carbon dioxide and oxygen, and water can evaporate out of this layer. Okay? In that layer as well is where you're typically going to find the veins, and those are extensions of the vascular system of the plant. Okay? And then on the lower epidermis, we will also find very specialized cells, and I went over this big time yesterday. Okay? That was the stomates. Okay? Stomates are made up of two guard cells, okay, whose shape changes as a result of how much water is in the vacuole. And we already talked about how the vacuoles change based on the amount of salt in the cytoplasm. Okay? That allows the stomates to open and close. Okay? When the plant is well hydrated, those water vacuoles are very rigid, and the cells are shaped like a bean, and the stomate is open. Throughout the day, as water evaporates, the cell's concentration of salts increases, the water vacuoles shrink, and the cell changes shape to be flatter and close the stomates. Not a conscious decision. There's no brain in the plant saying close the stomates. It's just a natural reaction to loss of water over the course of a day or two.
Are animals this smart?
Animals consciously change things because they think. Plants, this is just an osmotic reaction. Yeah? Okay. And obviously the stomates, like I said, are made up of two guard cells. Okay, so those are important terms. There's the question asked here about the succulents. This is what the leaf in a succulent looks like, because they don't really have leaves. This is just their general tissue. So they have the veins wrapped in the palisade layer, wrapped in the spongy layer, and there's big gaps inside, okay, where water can be stored. Okay, so the leaf in general, that's the structure of the leaf. The shape of the leaf, okay, is going to be something like this. This is the blade. Okay, this is the stalk. And here where it would join the branch or the stem, okay, that is the petiole. Okay, it's generally where the bud that produces the remnants of the bud that produce that particular leaf. Okay, but the most important thing, guys, is knowing what all parts of the leaf layer do, or sorry, all layers of the leaf, what they do in terms of specialization of multicellular organisms. Okay, that's the super important part of that. Okay, so leaves, their job, they're the photosynthetic organ of the plant. Okay, transport in plants. Okay, so this is the two types of tubes. Okay, the two types of tubes in the plant are the xylem and the phloem. Okay, the tubes are microscopic. They have to be. Okay, they're not big, giant, like a straw. Okay, they're microscopic tubes. They have to be microscopic because they rely on the polar nature of water and osmosis to do all the movements. If they're really big, we know those hydrogen bonds aren't strong enough for cohesion and adhesion to keep a column of water that's really big supported, and they'll just fall back down. If those tubes are microscopic, then the hydrogen bonds are strong enough to maintain a column of water of that size. Okay, so this is what the xylem looks like under an electron microscope. So this here is 100 micrometers, right? So given it, looking at that, these are all under 10 micrometers across, for sure. Okay, so they're very, very small tubes, but there's lots and lots of them.
Do they come in like different variations of size, or they all the same? Like
Well, I mean, you can see here in this picture, some are bigger than others, right?
like if it's like a bigger tree, are they smaller?
No, they'll be kind of all within that range. Okay, so on the diagram, and you have this diagram here, okay, just kind of going through the numbers here. On the next page of your notes, they actually have the numbered list that says what each number is, okay? But number 1 here is the absorption of water and nutrients by the roots, okay? Number 2 is the exchange of gases by cellular respiration done in the roots. The roots don't carry out photosynthesis. They just burn the sugars like our cells do because obviously they're not in sunlight, okay? Process number 3 is the transport of water up the plant in the xylem. Okay, that's the tubes that transport water. So you might want to write that down. The xylem tubes transport water up the plant. Okay? They do this because at the leaf, water is evaporating. When water evaporates, what happens to all the minerals that were in it?
So they stay.
They stay behind. That creates an osmotic pressure. Okay? A pulling force. There's suddenly a lot of salt in the spongy layer of the leaf, and water moves towards it by osmosis to balance it. Because that water is hydrogen bonded to other water molecules lower down, when one water molecule moves, the other moves, pulling all the others up with it. Okay? That's what's going on in stages 3 and 4 here. Okay? That's how in the xylem, the osmotic pressure and the polar nature of water work together to transport water with no expenditure of energy.
And like trees that don't leave their leaves, like say like copper planters, and they get like overloaded with salt on their leaves
No,
after a while.
no, because they keep transporting water. Right? They keep transporting water, so they actually maintain. Pines just go dormant, they just stop doing it. Yeah, but they don't lose their leaves. Okay, for number 5 here, okay, this is the exchange of gases responsible for photosynthesis. Intake of carbon dioxide, release of oxygen, powered by light. Okay, and then sugar is transported back down to the roots in number 7 here in the phloem. Okay, the phloem tubes, okay, are the ones that actually carry the sugary sap. Xylem tubes are actually old phloem tubes because a tree, any plant for that matter, grows by adding layers to the outside, not from the inside. Okay, if a tree or any plant grew from the inside, it would constantly be cracking and breaking. Okay, so we grow by adding a layer to the outside. So there's basically new phloem every year for a tree. That's why a tree, when you cut it down, you see rings. Okay, those rings mark the outside of the tree every year where the phloem was. Each year that plant was growing. And that can actually tell us a lot about the conditions that plant endured. Okay, narrow rings, poor growing season. Wide rings, good growing season. Can tell us a lot about climate, things like that. Okay, so we got those. Okay. So, xylem, okay, 2 tissues responsible, the phloem and the xylem. Okay, xylem's on the inside, phloem is on the outside. Okay, so the sugary, sticky sap is always on the outside of the tree. Okay, the water is always transported near the center. Okay, so the xylem transports water up the plant. That's key, okay? That's something you just have to know, okay? And that involves osmosis that we talked about already, okay? As water evaporates from the leaves, okay, and so basically this whole thing here, okay, is how water is transported, okay, through the xylem from the roots to the leaves. Right? So make sure you have that one highlighted. That's really important. You can see in the diagram here where cohesion and adhesion play their parts, okay, and osmosis is what creates the pulling force. Right, for the phloem. Okay, do we need anything to help sugar move toward the roots?
No.
Gravity. Yeah, gravity will do it. It's free. Okay, it's free, holds everything down, it's always holding you back. Okay, so that'll work for bringing the sugars down to 0. Okay, I think we got it all. Okay, talk to you guys tomorrow.